What a time to be alive. It's been a wild year at the Minnesota Capitol. The 2025 session started with nearly 1 month of House Democrats staying home and collecting a paycheck. Then came the past month of House Republicans enjoying a 1-seat majority. Now, the House is about to enter a third phase of this unconventional session with a 67-67 tie. It begs the question, what is the rest of the session going to look like? Well, best I can tell, there are two paths we can take. One path is that the so-called Blue Dog Democrats in the Senate, as they declare themselves, will prove to be sincere, and we're actually going to work across party lines in order to do sensible things that Minnesotans actually want. And we're going to find a coalition of the sane between the two caucuses in the House to address policy in a serious nature that's not unduly influenced by the extremes. It's either that, or we're just going to retreat to our corners of the arena, be completely inflexible and partisan, run out the clock of the regular session, and then have a special session where Governor Walz and legislative caucus leaders will decide the state's budget and policy for the next 2 years. Those really are the choices. And which path we take depends entirely on the membership of these legislative caucuses on both sides. Now, I'm having great conversations with Democrats about policy where we could potentially come to bipartisan agreement about things that are going to be beneficial to the vast majority of Minnesotans. It can happen. In fact, it did happen this past Monday when the House approved a whistleblower protection bill. But the difficulty that I run into on both sides of the aisle is that people are unwilling to let the other side have a political win. But what's more important, political wins or policy that actually impacts Minnesotans? Policy issues are one thing, but the legislature's top responsibility this session is to set a new 2-year state budget under the shadow of a $6 billion shortfall on the horizon. We're going to have tough decisions to make. This means setting priorities like every mom and dad sitting at the kitchen table has had to do over the course of the past several years. Which of these things would we like to do? Which of these things can we actually do? That's the task. We're clearly not headed toward a situation where everybody's going to be happy with the budget outcome. It's too bad that instead of managing the state's $18 billion surplus responsibly and sustainably 2 years ago, Democrats in full control of the Capitol made a bunch of promises that they could not keep. So now, as we deal with this impending deficit, Democrats already have pivoted toward blaming Donald Trump and Elon Musk and we House Republicans, who were in the minority for the past 2 years, for their own inability to keep the promises that they made. In reality, Democrats were never going to be able to keep those promises. We had a projected $5 billion shortfall back in November before Elon or Trump or House Republican majorities in this state even took office. As I've previously noted, Democrats would rather talk about Donald Trump at every turn rather than discuss their own disastrous fiscal record. Further tax increases to address our projected shortfall should be off the table because it is like squeezing blood from the proverbial turnip. The idea that you can simply raise taxes on an economy that you've already strangled and get more revenue is obviously incorrect. If that worked, we wouldn't be looking at a deficit after the unchecked Democrats raised taxes by $10 billion last year, despite having an $18 billion surplus. I guess we'll see if Democrats have the wherewithal to acknowledge they caused a spending problem in our state so we can get a budget in place and adjourn on time. It may only take one of them to have the courage to do what's right for Minnesotans. Let's hope so. Take care.